Hi, I'm Michael Stittle,
And I'm Nick Nanos.
and welcome to Trendline. So, Nick, we're about 2 months into containment measures, and now Canadian provinces and US states are easing restrictions. Despite some warnings in the US from their top health officials that this isn't over. So, that brings us to the border. How do Canadians feel about reopening the border at this time?
Well, first of all, we have to say that we are a nation fixated on the border because 90% of the population lives within a 1 hour drive of the United States. So, for Canadians, we're realistically a border, I won't say border town, border
Mhm.
country.
Mhm.
And in a survey that we recently did, let me just share my screen for a sec. We did a recent survey for CTV News,
Mhm.
and we asked about the views on the border. Let's see, here we go. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, we asked about keeping the border open or closed until the number of new cases in the US significantly drops. And we're talking about non essential travel, right? We're
Mhm.
not talking about the travel that's necessary between trucks and goods and people doing essential travel, but non essential travel. But check out this. You can see 78% of Canadians outright support keeping the Canada-US border closed to non-essential travel until
Wow.
the number of new cases, and only about 8% oppose or somewhat oppose. And when you roll up the somewhat support and the support, you're talking about basically 9 out of every 10 Canadians supporting border closures. So there you go.
So there's really no uncertainty there. Like hardly anyone is unsure about this.
Yeah, I think the fact of the matter is that for most Canadians, after they pay attention to COVID in their community, COVID in their
Mm.
province, COVID in their country, the other
Hmm.
place that they look at is what's going on in the United States. And it's pretty clear that the United States is still in a period where it has not necessarily flattened the curve, where New York, for example, is a major epicenter, not just an American epicenter, but a global epicenter for the pandemic, the COVID
Hmm.
pandemic. And Canadians are saying, okay, you know what? Once it looks like the United States is on a better track and has things under control, then we'd be more than happy to open things up. But until that happens, people would like to see non-essential travel across the border restricted.
And we've seen from U.S. President Donald Trump, he's been trying to put on this sort of brave face. He's not wearing a mask, despite others in the White House now, aides being told to wear masks. He's sort of taking this rah strategy. We can do this. We're winning. And then you saw Dr. Anthony Fauci, their top infectious disease specialist, testifying before the Senate this week, saying, it's really not over. We really have to take this slow. Which brings us to, I guess, how political leaders are handling this situation now. Because I get the sense, you people need to get the economy going, but not at the expense of loss of life, obviously. So
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of walking this line, and
Yeah.
how is that going?
Well, the thing is, just why don't we just put this into context for a second? So more Americans will die of COVID-19 than in the Vietnam War. And I always think of that as a
Uh,
scarring episode on the American psyche.
hmm.
According to the Economist magazine, more people will die of COVID-19 than in the London Blitz at its height. And even in Canada, more Canadians will die, although we've done a good job, more Canadians will die probably of COVID-19 than were lost in the Battle of the Atlantic. So we tend to, it's like we're almost desensitized to
Hmm.
this. But these are big issues, and what we're seeing is that there's a great heightened scrutiny on politicians, not just in terms of everything that they're saying every day, but do they walk the walk and talk the talk
Hmm.
when it comes to giving everybody else advice, but are they following the advice that they're telling everyone else to give on in terms of social distancing?
Right. And we saw Ontario Premier Doug Ford got into a bit of trouble with this. In Ontario, you're supposed to stick to your own household. You're not supposed to, there's no bubble merging as there is in Newfoundland, right?
Right.
But on the Mother's Day weekend, he had two of his daughters over, and he was quite open about this. He said that, I would I do it with elderly relatives? No, I wouldn't take a chance. So how will something like that stick to him after this is done, do you think?
Well, I think it would have stuck to him if he tried to deny or give an excuse or something like that. I think the fact that he just straight up said what happened helps him kind of manage this, and it actually humanizes him, right? It basically shows that the premier, every person in Ontario and in Canada and around the world is finding it difficult to cope with this, and that this is also the case for the premier of Ontario. That said, if there was a pattern of behavior, if he kept breaking the rules, that actually would stick with him. So why don't we just say that I would expect that for now, Ontarians probably give him a little bit of a pass. Okay, so you did it once, just don't make it part of your regular behavior, because we expect, as the Premier of Ontario, for you to be a role model for the rest of the residents of Ontario when it comes to behavior.
And we've seen leaders, as I mentioned, Trump not wearing a mask. I think Pence is starting to wear a mask. I heard. I could be wrong on that. But now we're seeing other leaders like France's president Emmanuel Macron wearing a mask in public, because it's this,
Oh yeah,
do as I say and what I do, right?
yeah.
And in Quebec, Quebec Premier Francois Legault also wearing a mask.
Yeah, check it
Nick.
out.
On our Zoom chat, Nick is showing Macron looking very stylish in his mask. You can see the French flag colors on it. Very nice.
Yeah, rely on the French to do a stylish mask. Right now, I don't know what the Italians are going to do, because the Italians are very fashion and image and brand conscious too. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Italy. But it's just an example of leadership where Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, is encouraging the French to wear masks, and it goes back to the what I'll call the leading by example mantra. That's probably that is very important for politicians.
And as I said, Legault also wearing a mask this week. But is it if you're trying to show optimism, let's say, that we are going to get through this, I mean, how does it work if you have a Trump where he's refusing to wear a mask?
Well, I think that's a bit problematic, but the thing is what we're seeing is, most leaders encouraging the wearing of masks in public settings where people interact with their neighbors. But there's some data that was quite eye-popping that we did, a survey with the Globe and Mail that we just recently released, and you can see here, I was quite surprised. 57% of Canadians that they're not wearing masks or gloves. And you can see about 1 out of every 5 say that they're wearing a mask when they go outside of their home. Another 10% say they're wearing gloves. 14% say they wear both. But I think this number is surprising, because the thing is that one of the things we have to watch out for is as countries and jurisdictions start to try to normalize and get the transition back to getting the economy functioning, that people do not conflate that with we're done, don't need to wear masks, don't need to do social distancing, everything's going to be okay, we're doing the transition back to normal. And I think it's going to be incumbent on governments everywhere to say, this is the transition back. However, we still need individuals to be responsible, to practice social distancing, to wear gloves and masks in environments that they believe they should be wearing gloves and masks, and in order to fight this, because it's not over yet. So I would worry about the challenge between, on the one side, people's ambition and want to kind of get back to work and normalize and say that we've won, and then the other thing, public health priorities, and making sure that Canadians remain responsible in terms of their personal behavior and the wearing of masks and gloves and respecting social distancing, so that the curve is flattened, as everyone wants to see it flattened.
And we've seen our top public health officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, striking that note this week, saying it's, Canadians need to continue physical distancing. We're really not out of the woods yet. Um, but it's also tricky, right? Because health officers were not saying to wear a mask early on. This is sort of a new development as well. I mean,
Well,
it's only until this week that we saw Legault wearing a mask, for example, and telling Quebecers maybe this is a good idea, right?
yeah.
So it's a pretty steep learning curve, and especially North America, to get used to this idea all of a sudden.
And well, I think the upside is that it seems as if there's more masks that are available. That
Mm-hmm.
if Dr. Tam at the beginning had said get a mask, there are no masks to buy because they were
Mm-hmm.
bought up fast.
I
Uh,
tried myself.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like keep pressing the enter button on Amazon. Try
yeah.
to get that order that mask, please. um, but the fact of the matter is that the supply of masks is actually better now. People are starting to make their own masks, which is
Mm-hmm.
also a positive sign in terms of public engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost kind of like if they had said to wear a mask, that might have created, I won't use the word panic, but would have created even more anxiety because, Canadians would have been told by public health authorities to wear masks. And even if they wanted to wear masks, it was just very hard to find. Fast forward now that we're into 8 weeks into this, there are more masks that are available, masks that are coming into the country, masks that the government is procuring and bringing into Canada and making available. So I guess the timing is good when it comes to the normalization. We just might see more masks out there,
Mm-hmm.
which is what the public health authorities want. But the good news is that the supply is better than it was for 4 months ago.
Is in terms of the overall number one issue that Canadians are thinking about right now, is
Yep.
COVID-19 still at the top of that list, or are economic concerns creeping up, or
Yeah.
what's
Well,
it?
let me share some. Let me share some stats. We talk about flattening the curve for the pandemic itself. Um, you can see in the numbers
Mm,
that in mid-April hit a high of 50%. So this is the top unprompted national issue of concern. Coronavirus, 50% of Canadians. You see that I'll call it the rocket trend line going up.
mm,
But check out the numbers in the last 4 weeks. You can see that it's basically dropped about 17 points in 4 weeks, which is significant. And you can see that blue line is the economy. You can see that creeping up.
mm-hmm,
Uh, if these two trend lines continue, probably in about 4 weeks, we might see the economy be the number one issue of concern, and coronavirus perhaps number two,
mm.
assuming that there isn't any new twist in that story. But if there's such a thing as a public opinion curve, what we're seeing at Nanos is definitely being flattened when it comes to people's anxiety and the importance of coronavirus as a top national issue of concern.
And how do Canadians feel about the economy now?
Well, there's still a significant amount of anxiety, and let me show you some. Let me show you some stats for Bloomberg that we do every week, and what you can see. The blue line is the pocketbook, right?
Mm-hmm,
Are your personal finances better or worse off than they were a year ago? How's your job security? We've seen a little bit of a dip, but it's flattened. The red line is the forward look on what I'll say the future strength of the Canadian economy and also on real estate values. So you can see that steep drop, but basically a leveling off of negative sentiment. Put this into context. You can see on the left, 50 is neutral. So think of this as a 100-point scale. 50 is neutral. So
mm-hmm,
anything over 50 is positive. Anything below 50 is negative, and you can see right now on the expectations index, which is the forward look on where things are going, it's still significantly negative at around 25 points out of 100.
mm.
So if the drop is not continuing, but it is stabilizing, but it's still pretty negative, much more negative than we've seen in the last decade when it comes to consumer sentiment.
Mm. So what's your prediction for the weeks ahead?
Well, my prediction for the week again, and am I allowed to put like an asterisk, kind of like a
Yeah. Yep.
disclaimer? So assuming there is no new twist in the coronavirus from a health perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What the prediction is that in the next number of weeks, we will see a continued rise in the economy as an issue, and what I'll say, a transition where what started off as exclusively health anxiety now will become a cocktail of economic and health anxiety, and the trend lines, those two things starting to intersect.
Oh, Nick, as always, thanks very much. And
Thanks, Michael.
and where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at NIK Nanos, Nick Nanos, or on the web at www.nanos.co.
And I'm also on Twitter at Michael Stittle. Thanks very much.